Hi there, Elodie. It's nice to see that you have submitted another set of essays. Good job. Thanks for doing that. It would be really helpful if you could include both the task that you are writing on as well as the image of the diagram. Okay, it's helpful in many ways. It allows me to see how well you have answered the question. And so forth. So do try to remember to include it in your answer. I will try to work out what the question here was, and it'll be interesting because if I guess correctly, that shows us how well you have answered it. So let's see what you did here. Okay, so experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated the global market. Some believe that eating local aliments produced by farmers could tackle economic and environmental issues, and personally I strongly agree. This essay will argue that favoring local producers will benefit both the economy and environment, using examples from the French, capital F, government, and La Sorbonne University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay, fine. The structure is fine. I would change this word here as it's really not used any longer. A little old-fashioned, so you could avoid that and use something else. I have a feeling I understand what the topic is, but I'd like to see how you develop it before I tell you. Okay, let's see what you did here. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that consuming national products has a crucial impact on the environment. The central reason behind this is twofold. Firstly, food imports and transportation will be reduced, which consequently will cut down greenhouse gas emissions. It has to be gas because it's an adjective, so it has to be singular. Secondly, the natural cycle of vegetables and fruits will be respected by importing less and eating seasonal and local food. For example, recent empirical research by the French government, capital F, demonstrated that 90% of all carbon dioxide is emitted by international transportation. Okay, the example is fine, and what you said here was fine, but these two don't match. You said that the cycle of vegetables and fruits will be respected, and then your example has absolutely nothing to do with that. Your example basically states that the importing of food leads to higher environmental damage. So what you've stated as your main idea here and the support you have to back it up don't fit together. Okay, so that's a little bit of a problem. It doesn't show a logical progression in your ideas. Okay, so this is something that you would see if it's something that happens continuously. It's something that you will see affect both your coherence and cohesion as well as your task achievement. Okay. Okay, therefore it is conclusively clear that promoting local food will decrease both the greenhouse effect and global warming and respect nature. Okay, so fine, you showed us greenhouse effect, you showed us global warming, but you really didn't show us how it will respect nature. Okay, because like I said, your support didn't have anything to do with that. Oops, where did I go? Okay, there we are. On the other hand, although there is a case for global trade helping emerging economies by boosting their economy, this impact cannot be overstated. Okay, this sentence is problematic for a number of reasons. When you use this kind of structure, although there is a case for XYZ and this impact cannot be overstated, it's a sentence that shows concession, so it shows some sort of contrast. You never said this, that there is a case for global trade helping emerging economies. Although the way you've said it here, it's as if we should have understood that from the previous paragraph. Okay? So this sentence to me feels really off. It doesn't tie in either to the previous paragraph or to what presumably the development of this paragraph is going to be. So it's a sentence that absolutely needs to be revised so that it does tie in both the previous paragraph and also this one as well. I'll see if I can try to come up with something as I read this paragraph, and hopefully I'll come up with something. Otherwise, I'm sure you can come up with something that would be adequate. All right, let's move on. This is largely because supporting local farmers will create value locally in developed and developing countries. For example, an extensive study by La Sorbonne University showed that favoring national food trade is associated with improvements in standard of living. consistent with this line of thinking is that encouraging local farming will also decrease reliance, 1N, on other countries for food. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that governments should invest in domestic agriculture. Okay, so looking at these two paragraphs again, I see what the problem is. Both of your arguments are just one-sided. So you are completely supporting the idea of supporting domestically produced products. Okay? You're supporting it from the view that environmentally it is better, and then here you're also supporting that economically it's better. Therefore, there is really no place for this on the one hand or on the other hand. That's appropriate if you're showing some sort of contrasting idea. Similarly, there is really no place for this although sentence here. Something like this would be appropriate if you were discussing two opposite sides of an argument. But the way you have developed your essay, it's not an appropriate linker. This is not an appropriate linker, nor is this, and neither is this sentence here. Okay? Let's see. So I said I was going to try to see if I could suss out what the question was. I'm almost there. Let's see. From the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that consumption of local food is beneficial economically and environmentally. It is predicted that national trade will increasingly grow in importance. Okay, that's what I thought. So my guess is that the question says, nowadays it is important to consume products grown locally, both to support the economy and the environment. To what extent do you agree or disagree? That's what I think this task was. I hope in your reply you tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. If I am right, then that's a very good sign because it means that you were on topic and that you answered the question appropriately. If I am wrong, then we have to look at your task achievement to see what happened with your development and what you needed to do to get that correct. For me, the biggest problem here, as I said, is some of these linking devices you used. They are inappropriate based on the way you developed your essay. And then, of course, I think I gave you a little more feedback throughout that should be sufficient for you to see where the areas that need some work are. Let's take a look then at your bar chart. All right, this looks rather small. It might be because of, let's see, is this the same thing twice? Yes, it is. All right, it looks rather small, so that right away that concerns me. I'm not going to do a word count, but I'd like you to. A general good rule of thumb is to try to be around 180 words. If you go above that, then there is a possibility that you're a little too wordy and that you haven't selected the important pieces of information. If you go below that, then there is a chance that you're not developing your answer and not giving some of the detail that is necessary to give a higher band response. Okay? So this looks a little short to me. Nonetheless, let's look at what you wrote and see, well, what you said, essentially. This bar chart shows a fluctuation in sales by two manufacturers in France for the year 2017. They are chip manufacturers. Okay, please conclude that information as well. It can be clearly seen that sales were over 50,000 for the year for Intel, except for 2 months, comma, April and June, comma, when the amount of sales was around 25,000. The highest number of sales was reached in June for Intel and accounted for around 125,000, whereas AMD did not sell any chips. The amount of sales for AMD was under 50,000 for 7 months. More than 100,000 chips were sold by AMD in February and July, which were the highest peaks of the year. Sales for AMD dropped in November by 10,000. Overall, there is no clear trend for each company due to the constant fluctuation during the year. Nevertheless, Intel sold more chips than AMD, even though AMD outperformed Intel in February, July, September, and October. Okay, I really liked this. I thought this was really rather good. I especially liked this last sentence quite a bit. That was a very good point to make. I liked that you grouped. Okay, you did a lot of grouping here. let's see, where was it? However, I have to tell you that I think you might have grouped too much. So again, I would like to see a little more extension, a little more detail. So one of the things that I want you to remember is that your task 1 should be written in such a way that the reader can more or less imagine what you are looking at without having it in front of him. Now, I actually tried to do that. I've seen this one many, many times, but I don't remember it, obviously. So let me tell you what I could more or less figure out. I could probably draw the figures for AMD because that was nice and clear. I know that in June it sold no chips. I know that for another 7 months it was under 50,000, so I know about 8 months. I know it sold more than 100,000 in 2 months, and this is a little problematic. You said buy 10,000, but I don't know what the figure was in October. So I can kind of gauge AMD. I have a little more trouble with Intel because I know the figures for April and July. I know the figures for June. And then the only thing I know apart from that is that for the other 9 months, the figures are somewhere between 50,000 and 125,000. So you can see I have a lot of gaps. Now, that is in no way to imply that you have to write 24 pieces of information 1 month for each of the 2 companies. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you may want to get a little more in detail, just highlighting some of the key points. For me, when I'm looking at a year, 2 of the points that are always extremely important are the beginning of the year and the end of the year. It's like as if it's a story. I want to know how the year began, how the year ended, but of course I want to know the important points in the middle as well. Okay? So I felt like you left some of that information out. The good news is that your grammar and your language, your vocabulary, all of that is all very good. So that's great. Now what we really need to do is just keep working to pull together all of these elements so you get a score that really reflects your language ability. Okay? So go ahead and correct these, send them back to us, and obviously keep adding to your error correction list. And that's it. I'll be waiting to see your next set of essays. Okay? Good job with these and good luck with your next.